South Africa's inflation rate has dipped to 2.7%, and that is lower than expected. But few are anticipating that this will translate in an easing of interest rates. Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the global tariffs introduced by U.S. President Donald Trump are negatively affecting South Africa's economy. He says the fallout from the U.S. trade war is a key topic of discussion among several financial leaders who are attending the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington. The governor made the comments while speaking to SABC News correspondent Kate Fisher.
It's not the easiest time necessarily to be a South African in Washington, but have you had some positive meetings here?
Well, it's always good to be in Washington. You get an opportunity to exchange views with various policymakers. The good news being in Washington is that at this stage, everyone has got exactly the same concerns. Is the concerns of the impact of the U.S. reciprocal tariffs on a number of countries. Almost all of the countries that are attending these meetings are affected by these tariffs. And in the conversations, what comes up is no longer just, this is the impact of the tariffs on my country, is what does this mean for the global economy? And a lot of the conversations are focused on that, with the U.S. being such a large economy. The thing that comes is, what is the impact on the global economy? Yesterday, the IMF came out with their growth figures. They have revised U.S. growth down by close to 1%. And the IMF also had indicated that they have revised growth lower for 86 of its members, including South Africa. And so the conversations here are about the impact on the global economy, the impact on the global financial system, and then everybody, I guess, will take what the impact is and what it means for their respective economies. That is how the time has been used here.
And given that and that decline in the growth outlook for South Africa, will you at the Reserve Bank also be revising your forecast downwards?
At every meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee, we revise our growth forecasts in either direction, because there are so many moving parts. There is no doubt that the impact on the global economy as a result of these tariffs, and as a result of potentially the tariffs that would be imposed on South Africa, and the general confidence that is impacted by these tariffs, it has got an adverse effect on the South African economy. By how much we would revise growth lower is something that we will deal with when we get to our next meeting.
How serious an impact are tariffs having and going to have?
Well, they will come through two important channels. The first channel, which is a direct channel, will be on the South African exports. Just over around 7.9% or below, below 8% of South Africa's exports go to the United States. And of that, half is commodities that are coming into the U.S. And so the commodities, as you might have seen, are exempted from the tariffs. What is then left are the manufactured goods, mainly automotive products, and agriculture. And this might not be big numbers, because when you look at the U.S., South African exports to the U.S., we only constitute around 0.4% of total U.S. imports. So it's not like we have a big impact on the U.S. trade balance. However, the impact on South Africa is significant. The automotive sector, up to about 100,000 people depend on our trade with the US with respect to the commodities, with respect to the automotive sector. And the second component has to do with the impact on agricultural exports. And agriculture employs a lot of low-skilled workers, many of them seasonal, who come into the agricultural sector during harvest time, and these people will also be adversely impacted. So the overall impact on growth might be just around 0.3%. So growth will be slower by 0.3%, give or take, given on what we have. And this was modeled using tariffs of 25%, not the 30% that was set. But the tariffs had been suspended for 90 days. We do not know when they come back, and when they come back, by how much these tariffs would be imposed. So it's a difficult call to make.
What about inflation, which has been coming down? Do you think that's going to continue? How confident are you?
Well, when getting into the previous meetings, and I'd said that there are both direct and indirect impacts, to the extent that U.S. inflation goes up, and we trade with the U.S., we will have imported inflation that would come through. The question is what happens to inflation elsewhere in the world, and if inflation elsewhere in the world rises, then the impact on imported inflation would be significant. However, if the other parts of the world experience a slowdown in inflation, these things might offset each other and it might not be that significant. However, the imposition of tariffs has also led to a realignment of exchange rates. Initially, the South African rand strengthened, then it weakened, and so the imposition of tariffs had led to volatility in the foreign exchange market, to the extent that you have got a depreciation of the currency that is sustained, that could feed through second round effects and lead to a rise in inflation. One thing that South Africans watch closely is what happens to the price of petrol. In spite of the depreciation of the currency, what we had seen was, because the imposition of tariffs led to a decline in the oil price, South Africa would still experience a decline in the petrol price, at least for this month. And that might be positive for inflation. The question is whether it is sustained.
Wage negotiations across the country have reached a settlement of around 5% so far, and that is above inflation, a lot above inflation. What is your view on that?
I can't express a view on whether people should be getting an increase or not. For us as a central bank, what matters is, are the wage increases above or below productivity growth? If the increase in wages is in line with productivity growth, the impact on inflation is nothing. And if the increase in wages is below productivity growth, that is positive for the economy and also positive for the inflation outlook. So when one looks at the settlements, one must compare the settlements relative to productivity growth.
Just to talk about gold, investors and central banks elsewhere are piling into gold. As a bank, have you increased your gold reserves? Is that something you're considering doing?
Our gold reserves have gone up, but they had gone up due to price effects rather than due to quantity effects. So the amount of physical gold ounces that we own had stayed the same, but because the gold price has gone up, then our gold holdings also goes up. Many countries do have increased their holdings of gold reserves. We still produce gold in South Africa, so in a way we have got the gold in the ground. So if we need more gold, we can still continue to dig it out.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about what you have been discussing here, or any outcomes that you can let us know about?
Well, it's early. The official meetings are really kicking in, starting this evening with the G20, and then tomorrow the G20 continues, and then we will have the policy meetings of the IMF and of the World Bank And till then, there isn't much that I can add at the moment.
Just finally, how important is it that South Africa is hosting the G20 this year?
G20 is a voluntary grouping, and South Africa was a founding member of the G20. We hosted the G20, by the way, in 2007. At that time, the G20 was just made of ministers of finance and governors of central banks. It is in the aftermath of the great financial crisis that the G20 convened for the first time as at the leaders level in 2008. And South Africa is the last member of the G20 to actually host the summit of the G20. I think that it helps to profile the country. The world's eyes are focused on South Africa, and what I would say, we welcome the world to South Africa.
Thank you so much, Governor.
Thank you very much, Kate.